The suitcase sat by the door like a threat I hadn't made yet. Liora walked past it 3 times before she noticed. I was in the kitchen, measuring coffee grounds with the same precision I used for everything else in my life. Operations and logistics. That's what I did for a living. Planning complex supply chains, identifying failure points, calculating risk. People thought it was boring work. They were wrong. "What's that?" she asked, pointing at the luggage. I glanced up. "Suitcase." "I can see that, Caelan." She crossed her arms, her silk robe catching the morning light. "Why is it there?" "Thought I'd pack early." I poured water into the machine, watching it darken as it filtered through. "You know how I like to plan ahead." She laughed. Not the warm kind. The kind that had been appearing more often lately. The one that said she found me predictable, harmless. "You're really doing this? The cabin thing?" Liora leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone. "I told you what Nora said. Everyone's going somewhere actually interesting for New Year's." "I remember." "Then why are we still talking about some rustic middle-of-nowhere trip?" She didn't look up from her screen. "It's embarrassing, honestly." I poured 2 cups of coffee, placed one in front of her. She took it without acknowledgement, the way you take air. Expected, unremarkable. "The cabin has everything we need," I said. "Quiet, privacy, time to talk." "Talk." She repeated the word like it was foreign. "We talk all the time." "Do we?" That made her look up. Her eyes narrowed slightly, trying to read something in my expression. I kept it neutral, bland. The face she'd grown accustomed to over 3 years together. "You're being weird," she said finally. "Am I?" She huffed, setting down her cup. "Fine. Whatever. But I'm not canceling plans with my friends just because you want to play wilderness, man." "I didn't ask you to cancel anything." "Then what?" She stopped mid-sentence, her attention snapping back to the suitcase. "Wait. What's that on top?" I took a slow sip of coffee. "What's what?" "That." She walked over, bending down to look closer. "Is that a legal folder?" "Might be." "Caelan." Her voice sharpened. "What is this?" I set down my cup, wiped my hands on a towel with deliberate care. "Just some paperwork I need to review. Thought I'd have time at the cabin." "Paperwork for what?" "Work stuff, property contracts, lease agreements." I paused, letting the silence stretch. "Personal documents." She stared at the folder like it might bite her. The label was visible from where she stood, neat, typed, official-looking. I'd made sure of that. "You don't bring work on vacation," she said slowly. "Usually don't." "So why now?" I smiled, not warmly, just enough to register. "Things change." Liora straightened, pulling her robe tighter. There was something in her posture now. Uncertainty where there'd been casual dismissal before. She looked at me differently. Not quite afraid, but close to something adjacent. "You're being cryptic," she said. "I don't like it." "Sorry, I wasn't. Didn't mean to unsettle you." "I'm not unsettled." "Good." She stood there another moment, phone forgotten in her hand, eyes moving between me and the suitcase. Then she turned sharply and walked toward the bedroom. "I'm meeting Nora for lunch," she called back. "Don't wait up." The door closed. I heard her moving around, getting ready with the practiced efficiency of someone who spent considerable time perfecting her appearance. Liora worked in lifestyle brand management, basically professional image cultivation. Everything was about perception, about being seen in the right places with the right people. I finished my coffee in silence. The truth was simple. I'd discovered something 3 weeks ago. Not through dramatic means, no hired investigators, no hacking, no breaking into her phone. Those were movie solutions. Real life worked differently. Real life was noticing patterns. Liora had started mentioning Julian Cross more often. Little things. "Julian says the market's shifting." "Julian recommended this restaurant." "Julian thinks we should consider property investment." Julian Cross, real estate developer. Old money pretending to be new hustle. The kind of man who wore confidence like cologne. Too much, too obvious. I'd met him twice. Charity events where Liora worked the room and I stood nearby playing the supportive partner role I'd grown comfortable with. He'd smiled too much, laughed too loud, touched her arm when he talked, letting his hand linger just slightly past appropriate. I'd noticed. Filed it away. Then came the scheduling inconsistencies. Late meeting texts arriving at 9 p.m. Brunch with clients on Sundays. Her phone face down on every surface, password changed twice in 1 month. I didn't confront her. That would have been amateur hour. Instead, I watched. Waited. cross-referenced her calendar against her actual whereabouts, using nothing more than publicly available information and logic. Social media posts from her friends, geotags, background details, and photos. Nora Finch was particularly helpful, constantly documenting everything, oversharing locations and timestamps without realizing what she was giving away. The pattern emerged clearly. Liora was spending time with Julian Cross. Regular, scheduled, deliberately concealed time. I could have exploded. Could have demanded explanations, made scenes, played the wounded husband-to-be. That's what she'd expect. That's what everyone expects. I did something else instead. I started planning. My work taught me that the best way to handle supply chain disruptions wasn't panic. It was methodical reassessment. Identify the problem, map the variables, design the solution, execute with precision. This situation was no different. The suitcase by the door wasn't for the cabin trip. It was a message, one Liora would decode slowly, over days, until the implications became clear. The folder on top wasn't random either. Inside were documents she'd never see but would imagine. Financial records, property deeds, prenuptial drafts, maybe evidence of things she didn't know I knew. The uncertainty would eat at her. I heard the bedroom door open. Liora emerged, dressed for lunch. Designer casual, the kind of outfit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, but looked effortlessly thrown together. "I'll be back around 4, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Have fun." She paused at the door, hand on the knob. "Caelan? Yeah? Are we okay?" I looked at her fully then. Really looked. She was beautiful. Objectively, undeniably beautiful. That's what had attracted me first. But beauty was just surface tension, holding things together until pressure found the weak point. "Why wouldn't we be?" I asked. She didn't have an answer for that. The door clicked shut behind her. I waited until her car pulled away, then walked to the suitcase. Opened it carefully. Inside wasn't clothing, it was documentation. Real documentation. Account statements showing money transfers, copies of property records, a detailed timeline of my observations, cross-referenced and verified. Nothing obtained illegally. Everything defensible if questioned. Just like my work. Airtight logistics, no loose threads. At the bottom was a burner phone. Cheap, untraceable, loaded with a single contact. Mason Hale. I'd known Mason for 6 years, a former military logistics, now private risk consultant. He didn't do illegal work. Didn't need to. His specialty was identifying vulnerabilities in security systems, organizational structures, personal habits. He helped companies protect themselves from threats. I wasn't a company. But the principles were the same. I texted him, "Coffee tomorrow?" The reply came within minutes. "Usual place, 0800. I closed the suitcase and moved it to the closet. Out of sight, but not gone. Liora would remember it was there, would wonder about it, would start second-guessing what she thought she knew about me. That was step 1. The apartment felt different now. Not hostile, just recalibrated. I walked through it mentally, mapping everything. The couch where she'd sat scrolling through messages meant for someone else, the kitchen table where she'd casually dismissed plans I'd spent months arranging, the bedroom where she'd probably constructed elaborate cover stories while I slept beside her. 3 years together, engaged for 8 months, wedding planned for next spring at a venue that cost more than my car, all of it based on a version of me she'd decided was safe. Predictable, easy to manage. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop, pulled up a spreadsheet. My actual work, nothing to do with Liora or Julian. But working helped me think. Numbers didn't lie. Systems didn't pretend. Everything had inputs and outputs, causes and effects. People were the same, really. You just had to understand the variables. Liora wanted validation, social status, the appearance of success. She'd built her entire career around it, and she'd chosen me because I fit a role in that narrative. Stable, respectable, financially secure, but not flashy. The reliable backdrop to her spotlight. Julian Cross offered something else. Excitement, danger, someone who operated in her world of appearances and understood its language. He probably made her feel alive in ways she'd convinced herself I didn't. She wasn't wrong, exactly. I didn't make her feel alive. I made her feel secure. Those aren't the same thing. But security had value. She just hadn't calculated its cost yet. My phone buzzed. Text from Liora. "Nora wants to know if we're still doing the New Year thing." I typed back, "Plans changed. I'll explain later." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. "What does that mean?" "Later," I repeated. I set the phone down and returned to my spreadsheet. Let her wonder. Let her question. Let the uncertainty build like pressure in a sealed system. Mason would help me understand the next steps, not because I needed him to do anything illegal, I didn't, but because he understood something most people missed. Power wasn't about force. It was about information, timing, and the willingness to follow through. I had all three now. The afternoon light shifted across the apartment, marking time with geometric precision. I worked through my project data, made notes for Monday's meeting, responded to emails with the same measured professionalism I always maintained. Nothing had changed externally. Everything had changed internally. When Liora came home at 4:37 p.m., later than promised, as usual, I was reading on the couch. She set down her bag with more force than necessary. "Nora's confused about New Year's," she said. I bet. "Caelan, what's going on?" I marked my page and looked up. Nothing's going on. Then why the cryptic texts? Why the suitcase? Why are you acting like this? Like what? Like, she gestured vaguely. Like you know something I don't. I smiled. Do you want me to know something? What? No, that's not... She stopped, frustrated. You're twisting my words. I'm just asking questions, Liora. She stared at me, and I could see her mind working, trying to figure out if she'd missed something, said something, left something visible she shouldn't have. The paranoia was setting in already. Good. I'm going to shower, she said finally. Take your time. She disappeared into the bathroom. I heard the water start, then her phone buzz on the counter where she'd left it. I didn't move to check it. Didn't need to. Let her wonder if I had. This was the beginning. The quiet recalibration. The moment when the person who thought they were in control realizes the ground shifted while they weren't paying attention. Liora thought she was managing two relationships, balancing two realities. She thought she had time to figure out her next move. She was wrong. I'd already made mine. Mason Hale sat across from me at the corner cafe we'd been meeting at for years. He looked the same as always. Trim, alert, eyes that never stopped scanning the environment. Old habits from his military days, I supposed. He was out of that world now, but the world never really left him. You sounded different on the phone, he said, wrapping both hands around his coffee mug. Different how? Focused. You usually text about meeting up to decompress. This felt operational. I appreciated that about Mason. He read situations clearly, didn't waste time on pleasantries when something real was happening. I need your perspective on something, I said. Personal or professional? Both. He leaned back slightly, giving me space to talk. I laid out the situation methodically. The timeline of inconsistencies, the behavioral changes, the patterns that pointed to one conclusion. I didn't mention names yet, just the framework. Mason listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. You've confirmed this? He asked. Through observation only. Nothing illegal, no hacking, no tracking devices, just publicly available information and logic. And you're certain? The probability exceeds any reasonable doubt. He nodded slowly. So you're not here for verification. You're here for operational planning. Yes. Caelan. He set down his mug, meeting my eyes directly. What exactly are you planning? Nothing illegal, I said. That's important to me. I want to be very clear about that. Whatever happens, it stays within legal boundaries. Okay, but legal doesn't mean consequence-free. I know. Do you? Mason's expression was serious. Because once you start down this road, there's no walking it back. People will see you differently. You'll see yourself differently. I already see myself differently, I said quietly. That happened the moment I confirmed what was happening. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. All right, talk me through what you're thinking. I pulled out a small notebook, paper, not digital. Old school, but harder to hack or subpoena. Inside were my notes. Dates, observations, connections. The other person involved, I said, Julian Cross, real estate developer. His entire business model depends on reputation and investor confidence. He's leveraged heavily. I checked public filings. 3 major projects currently in development, all requiring continued funding. So he's vulnerable to perception problems, Mason said. Exactly. His world operates on confidence. Remove that, and the structure collapses. And your fiancée? Similar vulnerability. Her career is lifestyle brand management. Everything she does is about maintaining a specific image. Successful, connected, aspirational. Her clients hire her because she represents a certain kind of lifestyle. So you're not looking for proof to confront them with, Mason said slowly. You're looking for ways to dismantle their foundations. Legally, I emphasized, through natural consequences of their own actions. Mason was quiet again, processing. Then, you understand this is psychological warfare. Yes. And you're comfortable with that? I thought about Liora dismissing plans I'd spent months arranging. Her casual cruelty, the way she'd grown to see me as an accessory to her life rather than a partner in it. The lies, the scheduling manipulations, the careful construction of a double reality where I was supposed to remain oblivious and grateful. Yes, I said. I'm comfortable with it. He exhaled slowly. Okay, let's talk principles. In risk assessment, we identify vulnerabilities by mapping dependencies. What does your target depend on? Where are the pressure points? What happens when you apply stress to those specific areas? I've already started that analysis, I said, showing him my notes. He reviewed them carefully, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of acknowledgement. Finally, he looked up. This is solid reconnaissance, he said. But you're missing something. What? The friend, Nora Finch. I frowned. She's peripheral, just someone Liora talks to. Exactly, and people like her are information leaks. You said she posts everything online, right? Geotags, photos, constant updates? Yes. She's your early warning system, Mason said, but she's also your broadcast mechanism. Anything you want certain people to know without telling them directly, you feed it near Nora. She'll spread it organically. That was clever. I made a note. Here's what you need to understand, Mason continued. You're not trying to prove anything in court. You're conducting a pressure campaign. The goal is to increase stress, reduce stability, and force mistakes. Every action you take should serve that purpose. Give me an example. The suitcase thing, that was good. It created uncertainty. But you need to maintain that pressure. Don't resolve it. Every time she asks about it, give her non-answers. Let her imagination do the work. What about Julian Cross? What about him? How do I apply pressure there without direct confrontation? Mason smiled grimly. You don't need direct confrontation. You need presence. Show up where he is. Make eye contact. Let him know you exist and you're aware. People like him, overconfident, image-focused, they don't handle subtle threats well. They're used to obvious power dynamics. So I become a ghost in his peripheral vision. Exactly. You're not threatening him. You're just there. And that's often more unsettling than any direct challenge. We talked for another hour, mapping out approaches, identifying risks, discussing containment strategies. Mason stressed repeatedly that everything had to be legal, defensible, and most importantly, believable as natural consequences rather than targeted action. The best operations don't look like operations, he said. They look like bad luck and poor choices catching up to someone. When we finished, he pushed back from the table. One more thing, Caelan. Yeah? Make sure you know your endgame. What does victory look like here? When do you stop? I didn't have an answer for that yet. He nodded, understanding. Figure it out. Because this kind of thing, it can consume you if you're not careful. I'll be careful. Will you? I met his eyes. I'm always careful. That's my whole job. He stood, clapped me on the shoulder once, and left. I sat there alone, finishing my coffee and reviewing my notes. The next phase required more detailed observation. I needed to understand Julian Cross's patterns, his routines, his vulnerabilities. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I followed someone. Not obviously, not in a way that would be noticed or could be questioned. I simply happened to be in the financial district during lunch hours, happened to walk past the building where Julian's company had offices, happened to notice him leaving with 2 associates. I watched from across the street, memorizing details. The way he walked, confident, almost swaggering. How he laughed too loudly at his own jokes. The expensive watch, the tailored suit, the designer shoes. He was everything I wasn't. Flashy where I was understated. Loud where I was quiet. The kind of man who filled rooms with his presence. I wondered if that's what Liora wanted. Not me, but the opposite of me. Julian and his associates went to an upscale restaurant. I didn't follow inside. That would have been too close. Instead, I took note of the location, the timing, the company he kept. Later, I researched the restaurant. Client meetings happened there, deal-making lunches. Julian was establishing himself as a player, someone worth investing with. All of it depended on perception. Over the next week, I established patterns. Julian lunched at the same 3 restaurants. His evening routine involved either client dinners or, twice that I observed, meeting Liora at a hotel bar in the business district. I never got close enough to be noticed, just close enough to confirm. The second time I saw them together, something shifted in my chest. Not heartbreak, I'd processed that already. Something colder, more resolved. They looked comfortable together. Easy. She laughed at something he said, touching his arm the way she used to touch mine in the early days. He leaned in close, whispering something that made her smile. I took a photo from distance. Nothing detailed, just enough to prove they were there together. Not for evidence, for insurance. Then I left before either of them could spot me. At home, Liora was acting differently, more careful. She'd stopped leaving her phone unattended, changed her routine slightly, asked more questions about my day than usual. "You've been out a lot lately," she said one evening. "Work stuff," I replied. "Project requiring site visits." "Which project?" "The Harrison Logistics overhaul. I told you about it." I hadn't, but she wouldn't remember either way. She never paid attention to my work details. "Right," she said, not quite convinced. "You just seem distracted." "Do I?" "Caelan." She sat down across from me. "Can we talk?" "We're talking now." "Really talk. About us." I closed my laptop, giving her my full attention. "Okay, what about us?" She hesitated, choosing words carefully. "Do you feel like things have changed between us?" "Changed how?" "I don't know. Different. Like there's distance or something." "Is there?" I asked. "Distance?" "I'm asking you." "I think," I said slowly, "that people grow in different directions sometimes. Priorities shift. What seemed important becomes less so. What seemed stable becomes uncertain." Her expression tightened. "That sounds like breakup talk." "Does it?" "Caelan, please, stop answering questions with questions." "All right. Do you want the truth?" "Yes." I looked at her directly. "I think you've been spending time evaluating what you want from life. That's normal. We've been together 3 years. People change in 3 years. The question is whether we're changing together or apart." She stared at me, trying to read deeper meaning. "Are you seeing someone else?" The question surprised me with its directness and its projection. "No," I said. "Are you?" "What? No. Why would you ask that?" "You asked me first." "Because you're being weird. The suitcase, the cryptic comments, the way you're looking at me like you know something I don't." "Maybe I do." "Like what?" I stood up, poured myself water from the kitchen, took my time drinking it. Let the silence build. "I know that we're not the same people who got engaged," I said finally. "I know that this relationship requires both of us to choose it every day. And I know that lately it feels like maybe we're not both choosing it anymore." "I'm choosing it," she said, but there was guilt in her voice. "Are you?" "Yes. Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "Making me feel like I'm under investigation." Interesting choice of words. "I'm not investigating you, Liora. I'm just paying attention, maybe for the first time in a while." She stood abruptly. "I can't do this right now. I have a work call." She retreated to the bedroom, closing the door with more force than necessary. I sat back down, opened my laptop, and made notes about the conversation. Her defensiveness, her questions, her guilt, all useful data. That night, she slept on the far edge of the bed, careful not to touch me. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Mason's question. What did victory look like? I didn't want her back. That ship had sailed the moment she chose to betray the trust we'd built. Reconciliation wasn't the goal. Revenge? Maybe, but not the hot, immediate kind. Something colder, more permanent. I wanted her to understand what she'd lost. Not through my words, but through undeniable consequence. I wanted Julian Cross to understand that actions have costs. And I wanted both of them to know that I wasn't the harmless, predictable man they'd assumed I was. That's what victory looked like. Julian Cross's confidence was performative. I realized that the third time I saw him. He projected certainty, but it was constructed, carefully maintained through expensive clothes, loud laughter, and constant motion. Men like him needed audiences. So I became his audience of one. It started small, a presence at the edge of his peripheral vision. I didn't approach, didn't speak, just existed in spaces he occupied. The upscale restaurant where he took client meetings. I had coffee there one afternoon, sitting 2 tables away with my laptop open, working on actual project documents. He noticed me but couldn't place why I seemed familiar. The business district lobby where his office was located, I happened to be meeting a former colleague in the same building. Passed him in the corridor, made brief eye contact, nodded slightly. His gym, I'd joined weeks earlier after researching his routines. I didn't work out near him, just appeared in the locker room once, getting ready to leave as he arrived. Our eyes met in the mirror. He frowned slightly, recognition tickling at the edge of his awareness. I was careful. Never too close, never too frequent. Just enough to register. The 4th time he saw me, at a charity event Liora had mentioned she'd be attending. Something shifted in his expression. He was talking to investors, champagne in hand, when I walked past at the periphery of his conversation circle. He stopped mid-sentence. Our eyes met across 15 feet of polished floor. I didn't smile, didn't frown. Just looked at him with neutral acknowledgement, then moved on toward the silent auction tables. 5 minutes later, he appeared beside me, examining the same donation item, a luxury watch I had no intention of bidding on. "I know you from somewhere," he said. Casual tone, but there was an edge underneath. "Maybe," I replied, not looking at him. "No, I definitely do. You're—" He snapped his fingers, trying to place me. "Business district? The restaurant? I get around. Julian Cross." He extended his hand. Performance smile, firm grip. "Real estate development." I took his hand briefly. "Caelan Morvain, operations and logistics." "Ah." Recognition dawned in his eyes. "You're Leora's fiancé." "Am I?" I said it lightly, like a joke that wasn't. His smile faltered. "I thought, aren't you?" "Plans change," I said, turning my attention back to the watch display. "Nothing's permanent." "Right, sure." He was trying to read me now, figure out if this was a hostile encounter or innocent conversation. "Small world, running into you here." "Is it small?" I glanced at him. "Or are we just in similar circles?" "Similar how?" I shrugged. "Shared interests. Overlapping schedules. Common connections." He laughed, but it sounded forced. "You make it sound ominous." "Do I?" I met his eyes fully now. "That's interesting. What makes it sound ominous?" "Nothing, just the phrasing." "Words matter," I said. "Precise language prevents misunderstanding. That's important in my work." "Operations and logistics," he repeated. "Risk assessment, failure analysis, identifying weak points in complex systems." "Sounds technical." "Everything's technical when you look close enough. People think relationships are emotional. They are, but they're also systems. Inputs and outputs, patterns and deviations. When something disrupts the pattern, the system responds." Julian's smile was gone now. "You're talking about something specific." "Am I?" "Look, man, I don't know what this is about." "Neither do I interrupted calmly. "I'm just here for the charity event, supporting causes, being visible in the community. You understand visibility, right? In your business, reputation is everything." "What's that supposed to mean?" I finally smiled. Small, controlled. "Nothing ominous, just observation. You've built your company on investor confidence. That requires maintaining certain appearances, being seen as trustworthy, reliable, someone who makes good decisions." "I make excellent decisions." "I'm sure you believe that." He stiffened. "What's your problem?" "Problem?" I tilted my head slightly. "I don't have a problem. Do you?" "No." "Good. Then we're both fine." I stepped back from the display. "Enjoy the auction, Julian. I'm sure you'll bid on something impressive, visible generosity and all that." I walked away before he could respond, moving through the crowd with the same careful composure I'd maintained throughout, but I felt his eyes on me for the rest of the evening. Later, I saw him talking to Liora. She laughed at something he said, but he kept glancing in my direction. She noticed, followed his gaze, spotted me across the room. I raised my champagne glass slightly. A toast to nothing. Her expression went tight. The next day, Mason and I met again. "How'd it go?" he asked. "He's rattled." "You confronted him?" And no, just existed near him. Asked questions that sounded innocent but weren't. Made him question whether I know things I shouldn't. Mason nodded approvingly. "That's good work. You're creating uncertainty. He'll start making mistakes, checking over his shoulder, second-guessing normal interactions." "He'll warn Liora," I said. "Let him. That creates pressure on both fronts. They'll start questioning each other, wondering who knows what. Paranoia spreads faster than truth." "What's the next step?" "Escalation, but controlled. You need to identify something specific to Julian's business, something legal and public that you can use as leverage." I'd already done that homework. He's got a major development project in the financial district, old industrial building conversion into luxury condos. The investors are nervous. I've seen the trade publications, cost overruns, permit delays. Nothing fatal yet, but fragile. "So his investors need reassurance," Mason said. "What happens if doubt enters that equation?" "The project stalls, maybe cancels. His reputation takes a serious hit." "Can you introduce that doubt legally?" "Questions at public hearings, concerns raised through proper channels. Nothing false. just highlighting existing problems from a concerned citizen perspective. Mason considered this. That works, but you need to be smart about it. Don't make it obvious you're targeting him specifically. I won't. And Caelan? Yeah? Remember what I said about endgame. You're doing damage here. Real damage. Make sure you're comfortable with that. I thought about Liora's dismissive laughter, Julian's smug confidence, the careful construction of lies and parallel realities while I was expected to remain oblivious. I'm comfortable, I said. Over the following week, I attended 3 public hearings related to urban development in the district where Julian's project was located. I didn't speak at the first one, just observed, learned the format, identified the key decision makers. At the second hearing, I raised concerns about environmental impact assessments, backed them with research, cited legitimate sources, asked pointed questions about methodology. Nothing aimed specifically at Julian's project, just general concerns that happened to apply. The board took notes, promised to review. At the third hearing, someone else raised similar concerns, specifically about Julian's development. I said nothing, just listened. Let the doubt spread organically. Afterward, I saw Julian in the hallway. He was on his phone, voice tight with stress. When he turned and saw me, his expression shifted from irritation to something harder. He walked over. You're following me. Am I? I looked around the public building. Or are we both attending the same public hearings? You asked those questions deliberately, about environmental assessments. I asked questions about proper procedure. Are you saying your project doesn't meet those standards? My project is completely legitimate. Then you have nothing to worry about. This is harassment. Attending public hearings and asking questions is harassment? I kept my voice level. I thought it was civic engagement. You know what you're doing. Do I? I tilted my head. What am I doing, Julian? He stepped closer. Not threatening exactly, but trying to use physical presence to intimidate. Stay away from my business. Your business is public record. Development permits, investor filings, zoning applications, all accessible to anyone who wants to review them. Stay away from Liora. There it was. The real concern. That's interesting, I said quietly. Why would you care about that? Because you're harassing her too. She told me you've been acting strange. She talks to you about our relationship? I let the implication hang. Julian's jaw tightened. We're friends. Is that what you call it? What are you implying? Nothing. I'm just clarifying terminology. Precise language, remember? I told you that matters to me. He was breathing harder now, anger building. But we were in public, in a government building, surrounded by people. He couldn't do anything without consequences. You need to back off, he said. Or what? Or... Careful, I interrupted. Threats are illegal. Questions and public participation aren't. Choose your next words wisely. We stood there, 2 feet apart, tension thick between us. I maintained eye contact, calm and steady. He looked away first. This isn't over, he muttered. I certainly hope not, I said. Public civic engagement is an ongoing process. I plan to stay very engaged. He walked away, shoulders rigid with barely contained frustration. I waited until he was gone, then left through a different exit. That evening, Liora was waiting when I got home. She'd clearly been there a while, pacing based on the restless energy in her movements. We need to talk, she said immediately. All right. Julian said you confronted him. Julian's mistaken. I attended public hearings. He happened to be there. He said you asked questions specifically designed to hurt his business. I asked questions about proper environmental assessment procedures. If that hurts his business, perhaps his business has problems. Stop it. Her voice rose. Stop playing games. I know what you're doing. What am I doing? You know about us. The admission hung in the air, and finally, after weeks of careful pressure, she'd cracked. I sat down slowly, keeping my expression neutral. Tell me about us. She realized her mistake immediately. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? Caelan, please. Please what? Please pretend I don't notice patterns? Please accept being lied to? Please play the oblivious partner while you build a separate life? Tears started forming. Real or performance, I couldn't tell anymore. It's not like that. Then what is it like? It's complicated. It's really not, I said. Either you're faithful or you're not. Complexity is just excuse wrapping. I never meant to hurt you. But you did anyway. Intent doesn't erase consequence. She sat down across from me, hands twisting together. How long have you known? Does it matter? Yes. 3 weeks of certainty, 6 weeks of suspicion before that. But honestly, some part of me probably knew longer. I just didn't want to see it. Why didn't you say anything? What would I have said? Based on what? I didn't have proof until I looked. I didn't look until I had reason. The reason was your behavior changing. The proof was everything you thought you were hiding. So you've just been, what, plotting revenge? No, I said honestly. I've been reassessing, understanding what I actually have versus what I thought I had, making decisions based on accurate information instead of comfortable assumptions. By harassing Julian? I haven't harassed anyone. I've asked questions at public hearings. I've existed in spaces. If that feels threatening to him, perhaps he should consider why. This is insane. Is it? Or is it logical consequence? You made choices. He made choices. Those choices had ripple effects. I'm just one of those ripples. She stood abruptly. I can't do this right now. Where are you going? Out. I need to think. Take your time, I said. Think carefully. After she left, I sat alone in the quiet apartment. The confrontation had been inevitable. I'd engineered it through steady pressure. Now both of them knew I was aware. The uncertainty phase was over. The next phase was consequence. Liora didn't come home that night. She texted around midnight. Staying at Nora's. Need space to think. I replied simply, okay. The next morning, I moved the suitcase back to its position by the door. Same spot, same folder on top. But I added something new, a printed itinerary. Not for the cabin. For something else entirely. Liora returned around noon, looking exhausted. She stopped when she saw the suitcase. You kept it there, she said quietly. Did you think I'd unpack? She picked up the itinerary carefully. I watched her read through it, saw the exact moment she realized what she was looking at. This is a solo trip, she whispered. Yes, you're really doing this. Did you think I wouldn't? She set down the paper with shaking hands. We need to talk about what happens next. What do you want to happen next? Caelan, please stop answering questions with questions. All right, here's a statement. We don't stand anywhere together anymore. You ended that when you chose to build a separate relationship while pretending we were still solid. The only question now is how we formalize that reality. Just like that? 3 years, and you're just done? I was done when you decided I was convenient background noise instead of an actual partner. The suitcase? That's when I realized. The suitcase is symbolic? Everything's symbolic when you pay attention. We sat in silence for long moments. I could see her processing, trying to find an angle. What about Julian? She asked finally. What about him? Are you going to keep doing whatever you're doing to him? I'm participating in public civic processes. If that impacts his business, that's correlation, not causation. He's scared of you. Is he? Why? Because you're unpredictable now. The old Caelan wouldn't have done any of this. There it was, her actual belief about me. The old Caelan, I said slowly, was operating under different information. With accurate data, behavior changes. That's not unpredictability, it's adaptation. This isn't adaptation, it's revenge. Call it what you want. What do you want from me? Her voice rose. An apology? Some dramatic scene? No, I said honestly. I want you to understand that actions have costs. You calculated wrong about the actual cost. Now you're paying it. You're splitting hairs. I'm staying within legal boundaries. There's a difference. She stood up, pacing. What if I ended things with Julian? What if we tried to fix this? Do you want to fix this? I don't know. Then there's your answer. Tears finally came. I never meant for this to happen. Intent doesn't erase action. She grabbed her bag. I'm leaving. Where? Does it matter? No, I admitted. It doesn't. She stopped at the door. You've changed. You're not the person I thought you were. Neither are you. I guess we both had illusions about each other. She left without another word. My phone buzzed. Mason. How'd it go? She knows. They both know. The uncertainty phase is complete. And now they're dealing with consequences. Are you okay? Why wouldn't I be? Because relationship endings are hard. Don't pretend you're made of ice, Caelan. I'm not pretending anything. I'm just focused. That's what worries me. Focus without feeling can cross lines you don't see coming. After we hung up, I thought about that. Was I becoming someone different? Or just showing parts of myself that had always existed but never needed activation? I pulled up the notes I'd been keeping, reviewed the timeline, cross-referenced Julian's business vulnerabilities with upcoming opportunities. The environmental assessment questions had worked. His investors were asking for additional documentation. Project delays were mounting. I opened Nora's social media profiles. All public, all carelessly documented. She'd posted photos from last night. Liora at her apartment, looking distressed. Caption, supporting my girl through tough times. Comments speculated about relationship problems. Drama was her currency. Over the next few days, I began a careful campaign, not targeting them directly, targeting their environment. I reached out to mutual connections, asking innocent questions about Julian's projects. I mentioned to acquaintances that Liora and I were taking time apart. I attended another public hearing, asked more questions. Local news covered it briefly. Julian's project was named. Each action was small, legal, defensible. Together, they created pressure. Julian's investors started pulling back. Liora's clients began distancing. Nora documented everything online without realizing she was providing intelligence. The suitcase remained by the door. Every time Liora came by, she saw it. Never asked any more. Just looked at it with dread. 2 weeks after our confrontation, I saw Julian at a coffee shop. He walked over. We need to talk. Do we? What do you want? Money? For me to disappear? I want you to experience consequences for your actions. You're harassing me because your girlfriend, fiancée, I corrected, and I'm not harassing anyone. I'm asking questions at public hearings, expressing civic concerns. If that feels threatening, examine why. You're deliberately sabotaging my business. Your business is sabotaging itself through cost overruns and permit delays. I'm just highlighting existing problems. His hands clenched. I could press charges. Go ahead. Explain to police how attending public hearings constitutes harassment. Stay away from us, he finally said. Define us. Are you acknowledging a relationship with Liora? I left before he could respond. Outside, my hands were shaking slightly. Not fear, adrenaline. He was cracking, making mistakes. The end game was approaching. The call came from an unknown number 2 days later. I let it go to voicemail, listened to the message afterward. Julian's voice, trying for threatening but landing somewhere near desperate. We need to meet. Face to face. Neutral location. Tonight. The coffee shop on 5th and Market. 9 p.m. Come alone. I deleted the voicemail and texted Mason. He wants a meeting. Tonight. Reply came immediately. Don't go alone. I'll be nearby. No violence. Never said there would be, just eyes on the situation. At 8:45 p.m., I walked into the coffee shop. Small place, mostly empty at this hour. Julian sat in the back corner, seeing me enter. I ordered coffee first, taking my time, establishing that I wasn't rushing to meet his demands. When I finally approached his table, he looked worse than last time. Tired, stressed, anger simmering just below surface. You came, he said. Did you think I wouldn't? Sit. I sat, but took the chair positioned to watch the door. Old habit from Mason's security lessons. Always know your exits. Here's the situation, Julian started. You're going to stop whatever vendetta you have against me, or things will get serious. Define serious. Legal action, restraining order, whatever it takes. On what grounds? I haven't contacted you, haven't threatened you, haven't done anything illegal. You're sabotaging my business. By asking questions at public hearings? That's protected civic participation. You know what you're doing. I know I'm exercising legal rights. If that impacts your business, perhaps your business model needs examination. His jaw clenched. I'm warning you. Don't, I interrupted quietly. Don't make threats you can't follow through on. It weakens your position. My position? You called this meeting thinking you'd intimidate me into backing off, but you have no leverage, no legal standing, just frustration that someone finally pushed back. This isn't about pushing back. This is harassment. Then prove it. File a police report. I'll wait. We sat in tense silence. Around us, the coffee shop continued its quiet evening routine, barista cleaning equipment, couple at another table talking softly. What do you want? Julian finally asked. I want you to understand something, I said, leaning forward slightly. You pursued a relationship with my fiancée. That was your choice. You knew she wasn't available. You did it anyway. Fine. Your decision. But decisions have consequences. So this is about Liora. This is about patterns of behavior. You take things that aren't yours, development deals, relationships, opportunities. You assume confidence and money protect you from consequence. Usually they do, not this time. You're not God. You don't get to decide consequences. Neither are you. Yet here we are. He pulled out his phone, pulled up something, turned it toward me. Screenshot of text messages, presumably between him and Liora, though I couldn't read details. She's terrified of you, he said. Look at these. She thinks you're going to hurt her. I didn't harm anyone. Psychological pressure. The decision to end a relationship is not violence. You're distorting the facts. I'm stating the facts. She wants a restraining order. Based on what? I haven't contacted her except when she initiated. Haven't followed her. Haven't threatened her. You're making her life miserable. No, consequences of her choices are making her life complicated. There's a difference. Julian's expression shifted, calculation entering where anger had been. What if I make this worth your while financially? You're offering me money? To move on. Disappear from our lives. Sign something saying you won't interfere anymore. I actually laughed. You think this is about money? Everything's about money. That's your worldview, not reality. Name a price. I stood up. There's no price. You can't buy your way out of consequences, and the fact that you think you can shows exactly why you're in this situation. Sit down. We're not done. We are. This meeting accomplished nothing except confirming you have no actual leverage. If you keep this up, you'll what? File a frivolous restraining order that'll get dismissed? Sue me for attending public hearings? Try to intimidate me? None of that works when you have no legal standing. I walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. One more thing, Julian. Fear is a language. You speak it fluently when you're the one creating it, leveraging business pressure, using confidence to intimidate, taking what you want because you assume no one will stop you. But you don't speak it well when someone turns it back on you. That asymmetry is going to cost you more than money. Outside, Mason was waiting half a block away. We walked together in silence for a few minutes. Get what you needed? He asked. Confirmation that he's desperate, making mistakes, offering bribes. Did you record it? No need. I'm not building a legal case, just applying pressure. The pressure's working. It is. But I need to accelerate the timeline. Why? Because desperate people do stupid things. If I wait too long, he might actually follow through on something that forces legal involvement. Better to end this before it reaches that point. What's the endgame move? I'd been thinking about that constantly. Mason's earlier question about victory conditions kept circling back. Public exposure, I said finally. Not illegal evidence, not private confrontation, public demonstration of who they actually are versus the images they project. How? Still working on that, but it needs to be soon. The next week, things escalated naturally. Julian's development project faced another setback. Nothing I'd directly caused, but community pressure I'd helped generate meant additional environmental reviews. His investors were now openly questioning timeline and costs. His confidence was cracking visibly. I saw him at the same gym twice more. Both times he left when he spotted me, not wanting proximity. Liora had moved out completely. The apartment felt different now, cleaner, quieter, more like mine than ours. I'd changed locks, forwarded her mail, handled logistics with the same methodical precision I applied to everything. She tried calling once. I didn't answer. She texted, "We need to settle things. Can we please talk like adults?" I replied, "Contact me through a lawyer if you have legal concerns. Otherwise, we're settled. Please. I'm sorry for everything. Can't we find some way forward?" Forward separately. That's the only direction available now. Nora posted on social media. Some people would rather destroy others than admit they're hurt. Jaws, toxic masculinity. Moving on. I screenshot it, added it to my records. The inflection point came 2 weeks before New Year's. I received an invitation. Formal, printed, delivered by courier. A fundraising gala for urban development initiatives. High-profile event, major donors, public officials. Julian was listed as one of the keynote speakers. Liora was handling event PR. They'd be together, publicly, in professional capacity but with obvious personal connection. I RSVP'd immediately. Mason called when he heard, "You're really going?" "Of course." That's deliberately walking into their territory. It's a public event. I have as much right to attend as anyone. Caelan, think this through. If you confront them there. I'm not confronting anyone. I'm attending a gala, supporting urban development, networking, all perfectly appropriate. You're planning something. I'm planning to observe. What happens beyond that depends on them. This could blow up in your face. Or it could be exactly the pressure point needed to break the facade they've maintained. Public setting, professional context, nowhere to hide. Just be careful. Always am. The night of the gala, I dressed carefully. Professional, polished, appropriate. Arrived neither early nor late, precisely at the midpoint when the event would be fully populated but not yet concluded. The venue was upscale, hotel ballroom, crystal chandeliers, servers circulating with champagne and appetizers. I took a glass, positioned myself near the edge of the main floor where I could observe. Julian was holding court with investors, gesturing animatedly about his projects. Liora was nearby, talking to event organizers, clipboard in hand. They were maintaining professional distance, but their awareness of each other was obvious. Neither had seen me yet. I watched for 20 minutes, studying the dynamics. Julian was overcompensating, laughing too loud, touching people's arms too often, projecting confidence that looked strained under close observation. Liora was controlled but tense. She kept checking her phone, glancing toward exits, radiating subtle anxiety. Then Julian saw me. His expression froze mid-laugh. He said something to his conversation partners, excused himself, and walked directly toward me. Liora noticed his movement, followed his line of sight, saw me. Her face went pale. Julian approached with forced casualness. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Public event. I'm a concerned citizen interested in urban development." "This is private fundraiser." "With public officials and open RSVP process, not that private. You need to leave." "Do I? On what grounds?" "I was invited. I paid admission. I'm behaving appropriately." He lowered his voice. "You're here to cause problems." "I'm here to observe civic processes and network with development stakeholders. If my presence causes you problems, perhaps examine why that is?" Liora had joined us now, trying to maintain professional composure. "Caelan, please, not here." "Not here what? I'm just attending an event." "You know what you're doing." "Participating in community dialogue about development initiatives?" "Stop," she hissed. "People are watching." "Then maybe we should act like civilized adults having a conversation, unless there's something about this situation that makes that difficult?" Julian's jaw clenched. "I'm getting security." "For what?" "I haven't done anything wrong, but please call security and explain that you want someone removed for legally attending an event because their presence makes you uncomfortable. I'm sure that'll go well." He looked at Liora, some unspoken communication passing between them. She gave a tiny shake of her head. "Just stay away from us," Julian said. "I'm across the room. How much more away could I be?" They walked off together, conferring in urgent whispers. I stayed where I was, sipping champagne, watching the room. Over the next hour, I circulated normally, introduced myself to other attendees, asked informed questions about development projects, networked professionally. Several people seemed impressed by my knowledge of environmental assessment protocols. One council member even asked for my card. "We could use engaged citizens like you at more planning sessions." "Happy to participate in civic processes," I said. "Transparency and accountability matter." All the while, I felt Julian and Liora tracking my movement. They couldn't focus on their actual responsibilities, too busy monitoring me, wondering what I'd do next. I did nothing, just existed, participated, asked polite questions, made appropriate conversation. The anxiety I created through simple presence was more effective than any confrontation. When Julian gave his keynote speech, I positioned myself in clear view, made occasional notes, asked one question during the Q&A period, completely legitimate inquiry about environmental impact timelines. His answer was flustered. He lost his train of thought mid-sentence, had to start over. Afterward, people whispered. Not about me, about him, about his inability to handle basic questions. That night, when I got home, I received a text from an unknown number. "You win. What do you want to make this stop?" I didn't respond. Let the question hang unanswered. The message had come from Liora's number. She'd blocked me from her main contacts, but found another way to reach out. Another text. "Please, this needs to end. Name your terms." I turned off my phone and went to sleep. There were no terms. The consequence was the point. Morning brought clarity I hadn't expected. I'd been operating under a specific assumption, that my actions were about punishing betrayal, about making Liora and Julian understand there were costs to their choices. Revenge with a polite face. But sitting in my apartment as dawn light filtered through windows, I realized something different. This wasn't about heartbreak. It wasn't even really about them. It was about control. For 3 years, I'd been the predictable partner, the stable background to Liora's spotlight, the reliable one who planned trips and paid bills and existed in the margins of her increasingly public life. She'd assumed I'd remain that person forever. Julian had assumed I was too passive to respond. They'd both calculated wrong. What I'd discovered through this process wasn't anger. It was capability. The same skills I used professionally, risk assessment, pattern recognition, strategic planning, applied to personal situations with devastating efficiency. I wasn't destroying them out of hurt. I was demonstrating that I could, that I'd always been able to, but chose not to until given sufficient reason. The power wasn't in the revenge, it was in the choice to enact it. That realization shifted something fundamental, made me examine my actions from a different angle. Mason had asked about Endgame. I'd been thinking in terms of their destruction. When did I stop? How much was enough? What constituted victory? Wrong questions. The right question was, when did this stop being about them and start being about me? My phone rang. Mason. You okay? You've been quiet. I'm fine. Thinking. About? About whether I'm the villain in the story or the victim. Might be both. Silence on his end. Then, that's a complicated question. Everything's complicated once you look close enough. Are you having second thoughts about all this? Not second thoughts, different thoughts. I realized something this morning. What? That I've been focusing on them, making them feel consequences, applying pressure, demonstrating their vulnerability, but the real change is in me. I discovered I'm capable of things I didn't know I could do. That's either growth or corruption, depending on perspective. Which do you think it is? Both. Maybe that's the actual consequence. Not what I did to them, but what I became willing to do. Caelan? I'm not backing off, I interrupted, just understanding the landscape differently. There's still an end point to reach. I'm just seeing it more clearly now. And what's the end point? Demonstration, not destruction. I want them to understand who they dismissed so casually. What they assumed about me was wrong. That's the point. That's still revenge. Maybe. But conscious revenge, not blind rage. There's a difference? After we hung up, I made coffee and reviewed my documentation. Months of careful observation, pattern tracking, strategic application of legal pressure, all of it building toward, what? Public humiliation, business failure, relationship implosion? Those were outcomes, not goals. The goal, I finally understood, was recognition. I wanted Liora to see me clearly, not as the harmless partner she'd outgrown, but as someone capable of matching her strategic manipulation with superior execution. I wanted Julian to understand that confidence without substance crumbles under sustained pressure, and I wanted both of them to know, undeniably, that they'd miscalculated. That realization brought cold clarity, one final move. Not dramatic or violent or illegal, just undeniable. I started planning immediately. The opportunity came 3 days later through Nora's social media. Because of course it did. She posted about a major announcement coming from Julian's development company. So proud of my friends. Big things happening. I researched quickly. Julian was announcing a new investor partnership, attempting to salvage his primary project by bringing in additional funding and rebranding the development timeline. Press conference scheduled, public officials attending, media coverage guaranteed. Perfect, I called Mason. I need your help with something. What kind of something? Compiling publicly available information into a coherent presentation, nothing illegal, just comprehensive. For what purpose? Public hearing. The development project Julian's announcing. There's a community input session beforehand. I want to present a detailed analysis of environmental concerns and financial viability. That'll bury him. Only if the concerns are legitimate, which they are. You're sure about this? Completely. We spent 2 days assembling the presentation. Every piece of data was documented, sourced, verifiable. Environmental impact concerns backed by expert assessments. Financial timeline analysis showing pattern of cost overruns. Community input demonstrating opposition. Nothing fabricated, nothing exaggerated. Just truth presented coherently. The morning of the hearing, I arrived early, set up my materials professionally, waited for the session to begin. The room filled slowly. Community members, activists, Julian's team, some press. Julian arrived looking confident. His new investor partnership was supposed to neutralize opposition. He saw me and stopped cold. "What are you doing here?" he asked, walking over. "Presenting public comment. That's what these sessions are for. You can't what? Exercise civic participation rights? I've reviewed the procedures. I'm following them exactly." Liora appeared beside him. "Please don't do this." "Do what?" "Present legitimate concerns about a major development project affecting our community." "This isn't about community. This is about us." "Is it?" I looked between them. "Then maybe you should ask yourselves why legal civic participation feels like a personal attack. What does that say about the project's actual viability? The hearing began before they could respond. I waded through several other comments, some supporting development, others opposing. Then my turn came. I walked to the microphone with my documentation, kept my voice calm, professional, factual. My name is Caelan Morvain. I'm here to present concerns about the proposed development project from both environmental and financial perspectives. For 15 minutes, I walked through the analysis, pointed out gaps in environmental assessments, showed patterns of cost overruns in similar projects by the same developer, quoted community opposition statistics, cited relevant regulations and precedent. Every fact was unassailable. Every source was verified. I watched Julian's expression change from anger to fear to something like resignation. His investor partners were taking notes. The press was recording. Liora looked like she wanted to disappear. When I finished, I thanked the board and returned to my seat. The room was quiet. Julian's team tried to respond, but the damage was done. His careful rebranding was now recontextualized as attempted damage control. The financial concerns I'd raised made investors nervous. Environmental questions required answers he didn't have ready. The hearing concluded with the board requesting additional documentation before proceeding. Not a rejection, but not approval either. Julian's project was stalled indefinitely. Outside afterward, Liora caught up with me. "You destroyed him," she said quietly. "No, I raised legitimate concerns about a questionable project. If that destroyed him, his foundation was already weak. This was never about the development project. Wasn't it? Or was it about demonstrating that actions have consequences, that you can't just take what you want and expect no response? What do you want from us?" Her voice cracked. "What would make you stop?" I stopped walking, looked at her fully, really looked, maybe for the first time in months. "I want you to understand something, Liora. You assumed I was weak because I was kind, passive because I was patient, harmless because I didn't immediately react. Every one of those assumptions was wrong. I never thought... You did. Both of you did. You calculated that I'd be hurt, but ultimately manageable, that you could build your parallel life and I'd eventually accept it or fade away. You didn't factor in that I might respond strategically. This isn't strategy. It's obsession. No, obsession is emotional. This is tactical. There's a difference. You've made your point. Can it be over now? It's over when the consequences finish playing out. That's not my decision anymore. That's just cause and effect." I walked away, leaving her standing on the sidewalk. That evening I received an email from Julian. Subject line, "Cease and desist." The message was brief. His lawyers were preparing formal action. I was to stop all harassment immediately or face legal consequences. I forwarded it to a lawyer I'd consulted weeks ago, just in case. She reviewed it and called me back within an hour. "This is toothless," she said. "You haven't done anything actionable. Attending public hearings and presenting documented concerns isn't harassment." That's what I thought. His lawyer knows that too. This is intimidation theater. They're hoping you'll back down from fear of legal costs. I won't. Then ignore it. If they actually file something, we'll respond. But they won't. There's no case. I hung up and deleted the email. The next day, Nora posted a long, rambling message about toxic people who destroy others out of spite and moving forward from negativity. The comments were supportive in that vague social media way. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. 3 days later, Julian's investor partnership collapsed. One of the partners cited concerns about project viability and community opposition. The press coverage was brutal, framing it as another failure in a pattern of overambitious developments. His company announced they were reassessing their portfolio and timeline. Corporate language for scrambling to survive. Liora lost 2 major clients that same week. Both cited changing brand alignment needs. Translation, they didn't want association with someone whose personal drama was becoming public. I didn't celebrate these outcomes, just noted them, documented them, recognized them as logical consequences of sustained pressure applied to vulnerable points. Mason called. "You seeing the news?" "I am." "How do you feel?" "Unclear. Satisfied isn't the right word. Neither is guilty. Maybe just complete." Complete? Like something reached its natural conclusion. The system processed the inputs and generated outputs. Now it's done. Is it done? Almost. What's left? One final demonstration. Then yes, it's done. What demonstration? Not sure yet, but I'll know it when I see it. I spent that evening going through everything I'd accumulated. Documentation, photos, records, timelines, a comprehensive map of how 2 people's choices led to predictable consequences. Then I started deleting it all. Not because I felt guilty, not because I was backing down, but because holding on to it served no purpose. The point had been made. The consequences had occurred. The documentation was just weight now. When my phone was clean and my files were purged, I felt lighter. The story was ending. Just one more scene to play out. New Year's Eve arrived cold and clear. I declined all invitations, ignored all messages, maintained complete radio silence for days. Let people wonder. Let the uncertainty build. The cabin trip, the original plan from months ago, was happening after all, just differently than anyone expected. I packed the suitcase that had been sitting by my door for so long. Real packing this time. Clothes, books, coffee supplies. Everything needed for a week of genuine solitude. Before leaving, I sent 3 messages. To Mason. Thank you for the guidance. I'm taking time to reset. Talk when I'm back. To my lawyer. No further action needed. Matter is resolved. To Liora. The engagement is officially ended. Have your lawyer contact mine regarding asset division. Keep the ring. Consider it payment for an expensive education. Then I turned off my phone and drove north. The cabin was exactly as I remembered. Remote, quiet, surrounded by woods and winter silence. No cell service, no Wi-Fi, just space to think. I spent the first 3 days not thinking at all, just existed. Read books, made coffee, watched snow fall through the trees. Let my mind settle after months of calculated intensity. On the 4th day, I started processing everything, not with anger or satisfaction, but with cold assessment. What had I accomplished? Julian's business reputation was damaged, possibly permanently. His confidence, the primary weapon he'd wielded in both business and personal dealings, was broken. He'd learned that image without substance collapses under pressure. Liora's carefully constructed public persona was fractured. Her career would recover, she was competent at what she did, but she'd lost the effortless certainty she'd built her brand around. She'd learned that loyalty mattered more than appearances. And me? I'd learned I was capable of calculated ruthlessness when pushed, that the quiet, analytical parts of my personality could be weaponized effectively. That strategic thinking applied to personal conflict generated real consequences. I'd become someone different through this process. Not worse or better, just different. More aware of capabilities I'd never needed to activate before. The question was, what did I do with that knowledge? Mason had warned about letting this consume me, about becoming defined by revenge rather than recovery. He was right. This had to end not because they'd suffered enough, but because I'd gone far enough. Any further, and I'd cross from consequence to cruelty, from response to obsession. The end point wasn't their destruction. It was my choice to stop. On the 6th day, I hiked through the woods, following old trails I'd mapped months ago when planning the original trip. The physical exertion cleared my head, made room for final thoughts. I realized something important. I didn't hate Liora or Julian. Hate required ongoing emotional investment. I'd moved past that into something colder, indifference tinged with clinical interest and consequences. They were case studies now, examples of what happens when people prioritize image over substance, confidence over character, convenience over commitment, valuable lessons, but not ones I needed to keep teaching. The final night at the cabin, I built a fire and watched it burn. Metaphor too obvious, maybe, but appropriate. I thought about the man I'd been 3 years ago when Liora and I started dating. Optimistic, trusting, willing to believe in partnership and shared futures. That man was gone. Not tragically, just evolutionarily. Adapted out of necessity, the man I was now understood darker things, protective mechanisms, strategic responses, the calculation of pressure points and consequences. That knowledge couldn't be unknown, couldn't be unlearned, but it could be contained, recognized as tool rather than identity, applied when absolutely necessary, dormant otherwise. I returned to the city on January 7th. Phone still off, apartment waiting. The first thing I noticed was an envelope under my door, hand-delivered based on the lack of postage. Inside was a single sheet of paper, Liora's handwriting. I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if it matters if you do. But I need to say it anyway. I understand now. Not the specifics of what you did or how you did it, but the why. I thought you were safe, predictable, passive. I was wrong about all of it. You were patient, strategic, waiting for sufficient reason to respond. I gave you that reason. Julian and I both did. We dismissed you, underestimated you, assumed our actions wouldn't generate consequences. We were wrong. You proved that comprehensively. I don't expect forgiveness. Don't expect anything, really. Just wanted you to know that I see you now. Actually see you. and I wish I'd seen you clearly before instead of needing to learn this way. I hope you find whatever you're looking for next. You deserve better than what I gave you." I read it twice, then burned it in the sink. Not from anger, just closure. She was right. She did see me now. They both did. That was the actual point. Not their suffering, but their recognition. The next morning, I returned to work. Same office, same role, same analytical precision, but different underneath in ways only I could fully understand. My phone stayed off for another week. When I finally turned it on, there were dozens of messages. Most from Mason checking in, a few from colleagues, several from Nora's social media somehow finding me despite being blocked. I responded only to Mason. "I'm back. Coffee this week?" "Thursday, usual place." On Thursday, we met. He studied me carefully. "You look different," he said. "Different how?" "Settled, like you figured something out." "Maybe I did." "Want to talk about it?" "Not much to say. I applied pressure. They broke. System functioned as designed. Now it's done." "Is it?" "Yes." "How do you feel about everything you did?" I considered the question carefully. Not guilty, not proud, just resolved. I discovered capabilities I didn't know I had. Used them when necessary. Now I'm choosing to set them aside unless needed again. That's a mature perspective. Is it, or just rationalization? Does the distinction matter? Not sure yet. We drank coffee in comfortable silence. Finally, Mason spoke again. "You know what I think? I think you were always capable of this. The strategic thinking, the pressure application, the consequence management. You just never had sufficient reason to activate it. So what changed? They gave you reason, and you responded proportionally to the violation. That's not villainy, that's boundary enforcement. Boundary enforcement that destroyed two people's reputations and careers. They destroyed their own reputations through their choices. You just accelerated the visibility of consequences that were always going to occur eventually." Maybe he was right. Maybe that was comfortable fiction to justify calculated revenge. Either way, it was done. I spent the next weeks rebuilding routines, work projects, gym schedule, social connections that had nothing to do with Liora or her world. Created distance not through avoidance, but through forward momentum. Occasionally I saw news about Julian's company, downsizing, restructuring, struggling to rebuild investor confidence. He'd survive, probably. Men like him usually did. But he'd be different, more careful, less certain of his invulnerability. Liora's social media went quiet for months, then gradually resumed with more measured content. Less about lifestyle perfection, more about authentic struggle, rebranding herself as someone who'd learned hard lessons. Maybe she had. Nora stopped posting about the situation entirely after getting ratioed by comments pointing out her role in broadcasting private information publicly. The consequences spread outward like ripples, touching everyone peripherally involved. Natural system response to disruption. I watched from distance, analytically interested but emotionally detached. 6 months after everything began, Mason asked if I'd do it again. Do what? The whole calculated pressure campaign. If you could go back knowing what you know now, would you make the same choices? That's hypothetical. Humor me. I thought about it carefully. Yes, because the alternative was accepting betrayal passively, letting them believe there were no consequences. I couldn't do that without losing something fundamental about who I am. So you chose who you wanted to be. Exactly. I chose to be someone who responds strategically to violations, who doesn't accept betrayal quietly, who understands that patience isn't passivity and analysis isn't weakness. And you're comfortable with that person? I am. Are you? He smiled. I'm still your friend. That hasn't changed. Good. We parted ways that day with mutual understanding. Some things change people permanently. This had changed me. But change isn't inherently good or bad, just different. The story ended where most stories about revenge don't, with quiet resolution instead of dramatic conclusion. No final confrontation, no reconciliation, no neat moral about forgiveness or moving forward, just consequence fully realized and consciously ended. I learned 3 critical things through this experience. First, that people reveal who they are through choices under pressure, not words during comfort. Second, that strategic thinking applied to personal conflict generates real consequences, but those consequences reflect patterns you create, not justice you dispense. Third, that becoming someone capable of calculated ruthlessness doesn't make you a monster. It makes you human. The choice of when to activate that capability, that's what defines character. Liora and Julian chose to build a relationship on betrayal and assumed safety from consequence. I chose to demonstrate otherwise. Both were choices. Both generated outcomes. The system worked exactly as designed. Now I carry forward with complete understanding of what I'm capable of when given sufficient reason. That knowledge is power, the dangerous kind that requires careful management. I'm not proud of what I did, not ashamed either, just aware. And that awareness changes everything about how I navigate the world going forward. The suitcase sits in my closet now, empty but present. Reminder of the moment when everything recalibrated, when I chose to stop being underestimated and started demonstrating actual capability.